What's up there, everyone? Welcome to this live recording of the Locked On Cavs podcast. I'm Chris Manning. He's Evan Dammarell. On today's show, we are going to take your question on the show, but we're going to talk a bunch about the the Cavs Clippers game coming up Wednesday night, 10:30. West Coast Cavs continues as they do two games in 3 nights in LA. First Clippers, and then the Lakers on Friday before they go to Phoenix, just south of LA. But I want to thank everyone making Locked On Cavs their first listen every day. Potentially, if you're listening on a podcast platform of your choice, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen. Remember, we are free and available on all platforms. So go check us out and subscribe to YouTube if you're watching us live now on YouTube and haven't smashed that subscribe button already.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Evan, happy Tuesday evening. Happy Wednesday morning if people are listening to this in the future. But how are you, buddy?
It's been a while, man. I'm good, all things considered. Some folks are getting rowdy outside, but this is like, I talk about the weather a lot on this show, but I haven't mentioned this. Today's weather is like, besides like the gale force winds, ideal fall weather for me. Like, absolutely love how chilly it is outside. It's gloomy. Put on a nice pair of jeans and a sweater and just like, enjoy the day and vibe. Blast some Phoebe Bridgers, Kyoto if Jeff Nomina's watching, and just enjoy it, man. You know what I'm saying? How are you?
Doing good. It's a fun sports night, so thanks everyone for joining us here instead of tuning into the bunch of others. They could. I mean, like there's Carly Lloyd's farewell United States Women's National Team game. You got the Knicks Sixers on TNT, which isn't much of a game right now, but there's NBA games. There's a series is on tonight, so a ton of really fun stuff out in the sports world. So we thank everyone for tuning in and hanging with us. I would like Brad Rowland to be happy, so the local Atlanta baseball club would be my pick.
There you go. Good answer. Because
and Sean Coleman. I would like Sean
franchise. Yeah. Sean Coleman.
Well, I would like Sean Coleman to be happy.
Sean is the bane of my existence, but yeah. Other than that, rock on, man. Yeah. Go Atlanta Baseball Club. Change your name. Drop the chop, and let's just move forward with it.
There's quite a crazy Rob Manfred quote out there about that, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Cavs Clippers. That takes place 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those of you either young enough or crazy enough to stay up late and watch this sucker live. Evan, Cavs are continuing this road trip. They came off a win in Denver. As everyone knows, you can go check out our last episode for information on that. But we go into this Clippers game. Clippers are 1-2 on the season. They've only played 3 times. Cavs have played twice. They will likely roll out a starting lineup of Eric Bledsoe, Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Nick Batum, and I believe Serge Ibaka.
They started Zubac against the Blazers last night.
Ibaka was out in their last game. Listed as out for tomorrow, but they will start Zubac at center. They beat a Clippers team that is not performing all that well. All things considered, earlier in the year, a Portland team that is really struggling. But Evan, what are you looking at in this game as we kind of look ahead to Wednesday?
Well, the thing that interests me the most is the Clippers are only 7.5 point favorites, and I wonder if that win against Denver tilted things more in Cleveland's favor, because what I'm really looking at here is Reggie Jackson, Mr. June himself, is really freaking good for the Clippers. Like, I think he is a solid player for them. I have him in fantasy, so I hope he has a solid night to spend. Maybe the Cavs win this one. I think I like the Bledsoe addition. I think defensively he makes a lot of sense, and I think Ty Lue can maximize his talents and kind of play and have the team play despite his deficiencies as a perimeter shooter. But like, the show's Paul George here, man. Like, Paul George is so freaking good. I think during the playoffs last year, he really like erased a lot of his doubters and a lot of his critics, and I'm intrigued to see how the Cavs deploy defending him. Maybe Evan Mobley starts the night on Paul George, because if they stick with Lauri Markkanen defending threes and as the starting 3 offensively for the Cavs, like, it could turn into a bad time because Paul George could cook him and eat him alive. And Reggie Jackson could take advantage of that as well, because Reggie Jackson likes to slash quite more often than not too. Like Zubac, even if Serge Ibaka is available, like, neither of those two are huge legitimate threats for the Cavs. Like, I mean, Zubac is a very good player. He's what I hoped Ante Zizic was going to be when he was with the Cavs, but Alas,
As far
either
as like,
way,
yeah, as far as like a burly drop back center who like he's kind of what you want if you're gonna
provides
not paying the premium for the
defense and
position. Yeah.
rebounding at like a decent rate. That's
Yeah.
all I needed. And so Jared Allen could spend time on him. Maybe you hide marketing on him because you know Zubac is going to be a massive threat. I guess Nick Batum is technically their starting 3 or their starting 4, depending on how you play Paul George. Like Paul George could be the 2, 3, or the 4 in this lineup. Like Ty's going to do a lot of tinkering. I think he's going to do a lot of adjustments. I'm intrigued to see how Evan Mobley looks. This is his first game back in Southern California. It's all since, leaving USC. So it's going to be pretty cool, man. Like it's going to be a late game. Do you remember Biltgo, the pre-workout Built Bar used to make? I have some of those in my fridge still. I might pop one of those before the game just to juice myself up and just ride the wave and see how we're feeling afterwards. Maybe we'll do a quick react after Cavs Clippers.
Yeah. The 2 things about this. Number one, Evan Mobley was like a youth when like the CP3 Blake DeAndre teams were like still a thing. So like that's how old we are. Yeah, I was like in college watching those games with friends like in the spring, and like he was like a young.
Both
he
were
was like
freshmen in college.
He was like 14
Clippers,
years old when those teams kind of like crap. Like
rivalry.
and those teams might have been like I think maybe broken up or close to by the time I got out of college. I don't even. The timeline is obviously just all over the place.
It's
but like
all weird.
Yeah, but I think how the Cavs defend here will be an interesting question, and I think it's the question. I feel like we keep talking about it and talking around it, and I don't want to I want to try to not do that. But I think in this game, it's just like okay, I think there's like a good argument that it's like okay, like Lowry obviously just is not going to be able to hang with Paul. Like that's just not something he's going to succeed at. You're setting yourself up for a lot of problems there. At the same time, Evan Mobley, we want you to go chase around Paul George, who's going to, he's going to run a lot of high pick and roll. He will come off some screens, even if he famously doesn't always love doing that and being used that way. There's just a reality where it's like, that's going to change how you play defense because the way the Cavs are playing defense, it's a lot of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, cutting off space, defending the paint, blocking shots, and providing that help side pressure to do things. And if he's defending Paul George, he can't help off of his man. He's not going to be able to kind of slide into a safety position, so to speak, and help defense. And Jared's obviously the guy coming off in to help more, but there's a structural change you will make to your defense if they decide to go that route. And it would be interesting to see if JB does decide to do that because it would indicate that I think how highly they think of Evan, and I think we already know that, but how versatile they kind of will maybe use him, and B, it would mark a change in how they play defense over 4 games and kind of be a big stylistic swing that maybe they would repeat Friday against the Lakers, which is another situation where you might need to see the team kind of do something like that. And it's just when you look at the X's and O's of this game, that to me is just the big stylistic question. Are they going to stick with what has worked and kind of do the regular season thing where they stick with their system and kind of tinker with it as need be and don't do anything crazy? Or does JB do the big 1-game playoff style adjustment? And this is generalizing. This is making this very black and white. This is obviously more gray than I'm sort of presenting it. But the reality of it is just being hey, will they tweak in a major way for this game? And that's kind of the thing I want to see right off the bat and how they do that. Or as a note on that, does he early go I can't do this, but I have to throw in Okoro or throw in Jetty just to put a wing in there for nominal purposes? I mean, yeah. It's also because if Mobley's defending Batum, that's obviously not the same kind of John Collins, Aaron Gordon kind of threat, but he's a shooter. And there are a lot of interesting defensive when it comes to how Evan Mobley will be used in this game.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting questions. Batum kind of is an interesting wrinkle for the Clippers. He was vastly overpaid in Charlotte, but I think he is a perfectly fine player, and I think he was solid for the Clippers last year. He's not going to be a world beater on a night-to-night basis, but maybe that's the player you hide Lowry Markkanen on, and maybe you put Jared Allen on Zubac just because you have that frontline defense then, and then you really do put Evan Mobley on Paul George, and this is his Isaac Okoro trial by fire, where Okoro had to play Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Kawhi Leonard within the same week, just a absolute trial there. But I want to talk about some of the offensive stuff in the next segment, but real quick, I want to give a quick word from our sponsor, SweatBlock. For a few weeks now, we've been talking about SweatBlock and these wipes that stop sweat for 7 days, and it seems like people have been listening. We have friends of Locked On who have tried SweatBlock and love it. We have a story here about a high school teacher. When he pitted out by 4th period, he'd hear snickers and whispers from his students. So He started bringing a second shirt to change in between classes. Then he heard about SweatBlock on our program. He tried it and is now hooked. No more Snickers, no more second shirt. Another success story here is about an avid soccer player. He heard us talking about SweatBlock and he thought it was too good to be true, but he always was the wettest guy after practicing games, like soaking wet. He thought he would give SweatBlock a shot, and he tried it on his pits, and the next day his pits were dry while everything else was wet. Guess he should try it on his other parts too. He says he didn't have to reapply for 9 days. Now he's a true believer. There you go, Locked On Cavs listeners loving SweatBlock. Stop excessive sweat for 7 days per use. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Dry shirt guarantee. If SweatBlock does not keep you dry, you get your money back. Not just for armpits, chest, back, feet, hands. Use it anywhere, and I mean anywhere that sweats. If you or someone you love is dealing with excessive sweat, you have to check out SweatBlock. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with promo code LOCKEDON or at Amazon or CVS.
Okay, Evan, let's move away from talk about the offensive part of it, and then I think we should talk about some of the other things in this game.
I wonder how the Cavs are going to play. Are they like JB's hell-bent and determined, and he's not hell-bent and determined, but he keeps saying, like, we want to play fast. We want to be a quote-unquote modern offense. And maybe against the Clippers, playing fast is a good thing because in terms of fast break defenses, the Clippers are ranked 23rd in the league. In terms of paint defense, where the Cavs really need to get going against the Clippers, especially with Mobley and Allen, like the two biggest benefactors, the Clippers are middle of the pack. But in overall defensive rating, the Clippers are 8th in the league. And so it's a bit of a mixed bag. And this is a Ty Lue coach team. I don't think he takes the regular season as seriously. He's more of a playoff caliber coach. He gets them prepared, gets them grinding. I mean, he got them to the Western Conference Finals after I went on Locked On Clippers and talked about what was so great about it. And everybody thought, like, oh, this is just Doc Rivers 2.0. So I'm intrigued to see how the Clippers defend the Cavs. I think because Ty is a bit of a chess master. And I mean, JB Bickerstaff outcoached Mike Malone against the Nuggets, and Mike Malone is a hell of a coach at the end of the day. And like the Nuggets are like the 5th best defensive team in the league in terms of defensive rating. I'm curious to see what JB Bickerstaff does to set up this team for success, and maybe playing fast is the biggest thing because the Clippers like to play slow and they struggle defending the fast break. But to be fair, maybe the Clippers keep up with the Cavs a little bit too because the Cavs are the 22nd best fast break defensive team in the league. So I'm just curious to see what causes the Cavs to break even. Maybe the Clippers play down to the Cavs a little bit too. That's a symptom of most Tyronn Lue teams as they play down to lesser opponents. And maybe the Cavs just kind of shock them early and they just roll off the momentum like they did against the Nuggets.
Yeah, notable. Cleaning the Glass has the Clippers as 8th, or excuse me, it has them at 9th in defensive rating, 6th in offensive rating.
NBA.com. So
like there's these, so these are they'll basically, like, just for those like keeping track at home, the only difference is really that like Cleaning the Glass like lops off any garbage time stats in their metrics, and NBA.com does not. So there's like the real difference. There's only difference in those in terms of what they're doing there. But this is the team that, to start the year has a net rating of like the 8th best net rating. Like they're +8 per 100 possessions, and they're 1-2. So this, like, the metrics would tell you that this is like a better team overall than the record suggests. And it's very early. These numbers are like can vacillate a lot right now before the data really, really accumulates. But I think all you said is true. And I think kind of going off of that, like, I want to see how Ty decides to match up his guard versus the Cavs guards, because he's going to go Jackson Bledsoe obviously being the much better defender of the. I'm curious to see if he says, okay, I'm going to put Bledsoe on Garland to kind of attack the team that way, or is he going to have Bledsoe on Sexton to kind of negate the scoring threat? I would
put Bledsoe on Sexton.
The strength factor you would think would make some sense, but it's just the way the Cavs are playing. You wonder if you kind of think, okay, like if Bledsoe can really disrupt Garland, and then Rubio is kind of the initiator and kind of keeping things going, and does that change how Cleveland plays? Does that kind of put Sexton into more of a creator role that maybe the Cavs, I mean, we kind of think that they don't necessarily want them to kind of be with him right now. I think those are sort of the questions about those are sort of the questions I would sort of have in terms of how that goes. And it's obviously going to vacillate throughout the game. You'll get different lineups and stuff, but like that to me is just kind of like one of the questions there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to think. And I think maybe we can put a pin in it for now. We have to really know who is and isn't available for both the Clippers and the Cavs. For all we know, maybe Darius or Dylan are out. I mean, Dylan's going to be a non-factor in this rotation because JB's going 8 deep. He's no longer going 9 or 10 deep on this rotation because I think his primary options off the bench are Okoro, Love. Oh, no, 9 deep. He goes Okoro, Love, Rubio, and Osman off the bench. And that's really it. Like Dean Wade, maybe we'll get some spot minutes every now and then, just depending on if like Kevin Love's off and you just need to look somewhere else down the roster for some 3-point shooting and size. So I don't know, man. Like, got to see who's available for tomorrow's game. The injury report has not been submitted. Last I checked, I'll do that as we talk. But what did you want to pivot to before I cut you off?
Oh, that was what I just said. I wanted to pivot to was the Bledsoe thing. I there's also just like I think it's just see how the Cavs follow up an important win.
Isaac Okoro is doubtful with a left hamstring strain against the Clippers.
Okay, so let's just break that down. That obviously changes the rotation. I would guess you would expect more minutes for Cedi Osman. You would think it's just kind of the guy already in the rotation, and then like does this give Lamar Stevens a chance to play as kind of like a Okoro, like dollar store Okoro? Does it give like is Windler? Is Windler listed on the injury report at all, or is he just?
It's not. It's Isaac Okoro is listed as doubtful with a left hamstring strain, and then Taco Fall and RJ Nembhard are with the Cleveland Charge because they're starting their season soon.
Yeah, and and just notably, notably on Windler, I think very quietly they did not pick up his player option, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope, I don't think so. I'm gonna look at the deadline for that.
I didn't get a release, and the deadline has passed because the season has started, if I'm not mistaken. I could be incorrect, but Okoro having a hamstring strain is obviously tough. That changes just how the rotation will be. It changes sort of what we can learn out of this game, and I think it just makes the game more challenging for the Cavs in a lot of ways. Correct? I mean, I think that will change just how. I would imagine it. We've seen JB. I think over the first couple games, I haven't finished my visualization for the Nuggets game yet, so I haven't quite like got to look at this in like a spreadsheet form to kind of like map it out color wise. But like my brain is telling me, thinking about those games, that we're seeing different kinds of lineups. We're seeing JB kind of mess around a little bit and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't early, and this obviously Okoro was a constant of it, and we haven't seen him. This is just going to change, his availability in every sense of the word. And I mean, even if he's going to play, a hamstring is going to hamper what Isaac kind of is, like in terms of his motor, in terms of his ability. And like you would think he would be a guy that the Cavs would be like, hey, just like stop Reggie Jackson
one day. It's typically October 31st for fourth year. So because Darius, Isaac, and Dylan have not been picked up yet. So the Cavs have till Monday to decide.
This is the tricky thing with us recording live. So Cavs PR, don't when you hear me mess up first, not Evan. But like that's coming up, and I would like to see Dylan. I think get a chance. I would just like to see it.
Yeah, I would
just for fun.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do they have to lose? They guarantee his option. What if like they use him as a little bit of trade bait too, to motivate a team? Like, I don't know, man. Is the Magic continue to keep losing? Like maybe getting Terrence Ross is an option for the Cavs. Like they try and package some contracts together and they include Dylan Windler maybe as like a rehab sweetener for them, because like they took that swing with Gary Harris too as a rehab option in the Aaron Gordon trade.
It was much more expensive.
Yeah, I know.
Gary
but
Harris was making
that's what I'm getting at though. Is like
it's
the Magic
really
suck.
Cheap.
They're not trying to win. Yeah. The Magic aren't trying to win. And they can take a long look at a player like Dylan Windler, maybe give him some serious burn, maybe send him to the Lakeland Magic if that's still their team location. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but there's options there. And I don't know, man. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't do it. But at the same time, I'm just curious to see what the next steps are. Like maybe Windler does get more minutes. Like with Isaac Okoro being doubtful, like if I were the Cavs, I wouldn't play him, especially if it's a hamstring thing. I would give the minutes to Lamar Stevens, though, if I had to pick. Like, gun to my head, had to pick.
Yeah, I think I would too, but I would like to see both at some point. I just think it'd be fun, and I think the season's a data collection season, but the season. Just before we go on a break, and people in the chat that are watching live, please hit us with questions. We probably can get like up to 2 questions if we get them. Beyond like, did this save JB's job? We're not going to get into the narrative stuff, but if you have some really questions or even just one really good one, we'd love to get to those in the third segment. So now's the time. Drop those below if you're watching live. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube, then you miss the fun and you should come hang out next time we do this. But I mean, to me, the season's just increasingly becoming about Evan Mobley. It's just like about Evan Mobley for me at this point.
Oh, he's so dang good.
I have a piece that's going up at Uprock soon that I'm going to throw up the doc. You can see my pen notes because I'm 90 years old and print things out and then self-edit them. It's just basically the concept is like Evan Mobley's the present, past, and future of what the Cavs are going to do here. And like hot take might be like I think it's like pretty clearly the best Cavs prospect they've had since 2011. Like the best like rookie they've had since 2011.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with how Andrew Wiggins panned out, if you look at Andrew Wiggins was when he was drafted in terms of potential.
that actually played for them and then like had impact. I think it's pretty clearly like he's the guy that is like,
for sure.
Right away.
He's so dang good.
Yeah. And maybe
Chris,
the best
what else is good?
Bill Bars.
Bill Bar.
Look at that. Look at Evan saving me from going on a tangent that makes this ad read go longer. And he knows I have a radio hit, so he's the king. But anyway, Bill Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. They have so many great flavors. Cookie dough. They have the pumpkin puff right now out. That's marshmallow with pumpkin flavoring and that great Bill Bar chocolate coating. You got to go get that. They have cookie dough chunk. I had a cookie dough one today, Evan. Remains just undefeated in terms of a protein bar. And look, not only Built Bar is the best tasting bar, but they're healthy too. 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors. They're all tasty and all healthy. So order today. Get that blueberry muffin. Get that pumpkin puff for your spooky fall season or whatever it is you like. And Built Bar, by the way, is the official protein bar of the United States track and field team and NASCAR. I mean, can't get much better than sponsoring 2 elite groups right there. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, go to built.com for your 15% off with code LOCKED15. Boom. Okay, Evan. So let's see if we wait on some questions here. I guess I want to start with this one from Daniel. Did these 2 wins?
Oh, shoot, we can talk about this for an entire segment, man.
Well, I think like I want to reframe the question because I think like I don't think like his job was ever like immediately like in danger in this sense, right? But I think I would think that this in terms of like the immediate pressure, the heat, if it was, I don't know where I don't like have like a good gauge on like where, if this was like an oven or a stove and we were like cooking some eggs in the morning, I don't know if the heat was like really high.
Cooking eggs on an oven, man. Like unless you're making like a nice quiche or something.
Or like a frittata. Yeah. Like an oven frittata. Yeah. I mean, if you're cooking like some eggs on the stove and you got the, like, do we flick the heat on way too high or is it like kind of low and slow, like where you should be when you're cooking some eggs? Like, I don't know what the number is.
Well, see, in terms of JB, it's tough. I think maybe like publicly, there's a lot of people who are saying, they should fire him just based on the rotations and starting Lauri Markkanen and the fact that they looked pretty mediocre against the Hornets and the Grizzlies. I think that bounce back win, that was a really good win against the Hawks. Like they outplayed the Hawks and like it was a close game at times because like it's tough to defend Trae Young for 48 minutes.
Well, in a game where they took advantage of Atlanta, like kind of struggling, not kind of faltering late, and like took advantage of an opportunity that presented itself. Like that's like the sign of like a team that has a little bit of legs to it.
Let's put it this way. JB against Nate McMillan, who is a phenomenal coach. I think the Pacers will regret for the longest time letting him go. And then Mike Malone with Denver, JB outcoached both of them, like in both games. Like tactically, like really rode the momentum, rode the hot hands, played smart, played with really creative lineups that weren't. Yes, the marketing thing is unconventional, but like I said on Monday's show, JB kind of looks at it he looks at a positionless option where like he has the bigs and he has the smalls, and I don't know where Isaac Okoro falls in that. Like the smalls are Garland, Sexton, Rubio, Pangos as well, like just in terms of like key smalls, and then you have the bigs, which are Mobley, Allen, Love, Markkanen, Taco Fall to an extent because he's a huge Taco Fall fan, and then maybe the wings are a separate group as well, but because I don't know where those fall in that group because JB hasn't explicitly referred to one of those or one or the other. So yeah, he does some unconventional stuff. He does do some tinkering. I think the job security of not having to coach for his job like he did in Memphis or Houston has really added security, but I think these 2 wins are good palate cleansers. We'll see how the rest of this road trip grows. Because I was talking to somebody in the Cavs like before the schedule was announced. He's like, "There's a good chance we could be like 0-7 or whatever the number would
You
be."
and I were like, a little
Yeah, we were
shaky. Like,
skeptical. Like, well, he's just like, when Portland comes to town, that's like the next time they have a home game. He's just like, we could not have won a single game yet. And I kind of believed it just based on how the schedule shook out. Like, I'm just really high on what Atlanta's doing. I'm really high on what Denver's doing and sans Jamal Murray. But I don't ever think JB's like coaching for job security, but maybe the seat's starting to get warm if the Cavs are winless heading back to their home game against Portland before they go on another road trip. So I don't think he'd be fired. I know the Cavs keep saying he's the right coach for this team right now, and I really genuinely do believe that in my heart of hearts. Like, he is pressing the right buttons right now and working well with a young team, especially for a coach who's notorious for not playing young players during his time with Memphis. So I don't know, man. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like banging at the drum saying they need to fire JB Bickerstaff or like what he's doing is wrong. Yeah, what he's doing is unconventional, but people are also baking their takes based off 2 or 3 games. We're going to do an episode when we're 10 games in where the Cavs say they're going to reevaluate their rotations. We're going to do the same to see what is and isn't working. And I think that's the right approach. You take a methodical approach because Kobe's made it clear as well. Like, COVID kind of skewed a lot of things last year. This is an evaluation period for the Cavs now. So why would you fire your coach in the midst of like the early stretch of the season just because things have looked kind of shaky for the first 2 or 3 games?
This could be the most normal year the Cavs have had since
and that's all I want.
Like, I mean, but I mean, I'm trying to think of like what was the last like normal-ish Cavs season? Like the last pre-LeBron year?
No, because that was a weird year too. Because they hired Mike Brown as head coach.
Yeah,
like,
and then
that made it odd to begin with. And then like Kyrie and Dion publicly hated each other. And then they traded for Luol Deng, who had no desire to be here. And then they get Spencer Hawes, who it was weird, man. Like Anderson Varejao.
Yeah, but he did like it was all weird,
team,
but it
worked.
By their standards at the time, like it sort of worked. So
it was being held together by rubber bands and chewing gum and paper clips, but it was.
This could be this could be the most normal Cavs season like in a long time. I think what we're getting here. But Evan, let's take one more question and get out of here. Nice copper mug. Johnny Taylor asked, "How do both of you feel about Darius being passive and not looking to score as much? Would like to see him freeze than he did against Denver." You take this first.
We kind of talked about this on the second show of today because we recorded Tuesday's show during the day. I'm not overly concerned because we talked about how Chris Paul can still have an immediate impact on the Suns or any team because, yes, they lost to the Blazers the other night, but he scored 4 points, but had 11 assists, was positive defensively, like did the right things to still set up his teammates for success. I think Darius is still adjusting to this offensive role. Jared Allen said that a lot of his teammates are still playing 2 steps ahead and are kind of overthinking their new offensive identity. I think, again, give it a little time, let these guys settle in. They're young. They're in their early 20s. They're learning new stuff on the fly. This is like the first training camp JB Bickerstaff's actually had where he can truly coach this team. So like there's a lot of building that they're doing on the fly too. If he's continuing to look passive in like 10, 15 games into the season, yeah, maybe I'm just like a little concerned. I told people like last year, the All-Star break was when I started to raise a little bit of a red flag if Darius Garland was still looking kind of mediocre, and he wasn't. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he can still build momentum towards it, but it's just familiarity with new teammates and comfort. Like there's a lot of new factors here. Like
yeah, he sprained his ankle in the first game of the season, which didn't help.
Yep. And he is now 2 games behind the rest of his teammates that have played meaningful minutes. So it's not a huge gap, but he's got to do a little bit of catching up too. Because like some of the players are looking comfortable with it. Like there's going to be nights where things look clunky and unrefined. And like it could be against the Clippers. It could be against the Lakers. It could be against the Suns. Like all 3 of those teams are going to be like real tests for the Cavs. And then like they get to play Charlotte, it's going to be a fun game no matter what. And then they come home to play Portland, and Portland's reeling right now. Like they look really bad. And so that'll maybe be like the new feel good vibe game if the Cavs get their teeth kicked in over the next 4 games or so.
Yeah. The Larry Nance Jr. homecoming game.
I am kind of surprised Larry is just looking so mediocre for the Blazers. I thought he makes a lot of sense for that team.
Yeah.
And again, it's probably familiarity playing like Dame and CJ and stuff, but like, holy Gavolt, they're bad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help
Just
that
a
Norm
yeah.
hurt, but either way.
Yeah. Things are goofy. The new code, all that stuff. But just a couple notes on Darius statistically. Cleaning the glass so far. Here's his shot breakdown, Evan. And this actually caught me by surprise. I think it'll catch the question asker by surprise. But 54% of his shots have come from 3-point. Non-corner threes are 50% of his shot died so far. 33% in the mid-range, including 29% in the short mid, so those floaters that he loves, and 12% of his shots are at the rim so far. So his shot diet is like very skewed out and then in right now. Some of that I think is like, just it's 2 games. It's a total of 62 minutes over 2 games. So like this is a tiny sample in terms of what he is. We'll see where it gets him. We'll see if I don't think he's taken a free throw yet, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think he's taken drawn a foul yet, it looks like. The Clean the Glass at least here says he hasn't taken a free throw, and Ben Falk's site is my favorite site in the world. Had a free throw yet. So that's notable. And last year he got up to league average, or he was in the he was up at 50%, 50 percentile in and one rate among point guards. So that's a notable thing that he was last year. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see how this progresses. It's certainly worth watching. And I was reading a very good post from Dan Devine at The Ringer that I read probably a couple hours ago about Ja Morant and how Ja Morant has been incredible to start the year. And watching Ja play offense is he has figured out this level of attacking off ball. He's added the pull-up 3. He's added some stuff that is just Darius, I think, is clearly just behind him in terms of how we're doing this. And this is a comparison, but it's you can see how a young guard figures it out, and how a younger guard who's leading an offense kind of gets his feet totally under him and figures all this stuff out and really makes it fly. And Darius is still kind of figuring that out. The new offense obviously contributes to that. The injury contributes to that. There's a lot of kind of movie pieces here, but if you want to end on kind of a note that I think should encourage you, we touched on this in the previous show, but those threes that he took against Denver, context considered, really, really a thing that if he adds those and takes those regularly, that's a good shot if he can make those at a relatively good clip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once he finds that comfort, I compared him to. It's funny we mentioned normalcy with the Cavs, that 1 year Mike Brown maybe he's playing a little bit like that, like Kyrie did that season, where Kyrie was looking more so to get his teammates involved, and then knew there was opportunities for him to get buckets because either his teammates were going to make their shots. But you saw that a lot with Denver. Objectively, Darius and Colin both were awful in the first half, and Mike Malone made a point to say he's going to defend the hell out of both of them. Darius was looking to get Colin going in the second half more often than not, because that's just what a good point guard does, is he tries to make the rest of his teammates hot and build momentum off them. And then, he knows if they're going, they're going to command defensive attention, and then they can get their shots too. So it's chess. Darius is still figuring it out, and give him the benefit of the doubt and wait for it to see what happens. And
it's, if you compare him to a Rubio in the situation, Ricky Rubio, who attacks a little bit more, has been more aggressive when he's been on the court in terms of just sometimes just going one-on-one or kind of running some impromptu 2-man action. Darius it's still feeling that out, and Rubio just has this wealth of experience to just kind of go to and feel out the situations. Darius is still figuring some of that out. I mean, he's had a very rough, weird 2-year start of his career. There's certainly some impact on your growth. When you've had the kind of weird 2 years that you've had, it's not tangible. I can't calculate that and give you a statistic that explains that, but I think it's just true that there is just a learning curve here still going on, and it's still very early. I would, before I think we wrap up, I think we both kind of agree on this, Evan. I think if you're thinking about this in terms of viewing the season, whether it's Sexton, Garland, Mobley, Mobley, I would say get very hyped out of Evan Mobley, because I think he's there's no indication to me that this is fake. Whatever it is, whatever you're kind of pessimistic about or maybe really excited about in the non-Mobley category, I would say just be patient, let it suss itself out, and just kind of let's get to 10 games, let's get to 15 games and kind of see. I think that's even true for me with I'm a Markkanen at the 3 skeptic. And I'm even saying, okay, I have to let this kind of bear out. And
Matt Moore shared the other today.
I did not. I know
On
he,
19
but I know
matchups versus
he.
Lauri Markkanen last night, Michael Porter Jr. scored 0 points.
I just don't know. But it's also just like I just don't know if that's like real is the thing. I just like
Yeah,
don't know if that's like something
we
that
need
is like
more
a
than
fluke.
one game. We
Yeah.
need 10,
Yeah.
15 games.
And Matt is who's great Action Network. Go check him out on Locked On Nuggets. Also, like the first game of the season was like the Cavs can't start Lowry at the 3 anymore. Like he said that after the first game when they played the Grizzlies. So like, is what it is. Yeah, man. I think it's just tricky. I think it's hard to know right now, like if some of this stuff is just like fluky and it's just happening, or if it's like a sign of something that is actually there and it's like even if it's weird and unexpected. I think that's like sort of what that's the beauty of the early season. You're trying to figure out what is real, what is just like a mirage, and what is like actually something we're gonna not have to worry about in like 6 months because it was just a blip on the radar. But Evan, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, not really. Just if you're checking us out on YouTube right now, please subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. If you're listening on any of your podcast platforms, if you're Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. And if you're listening, like Chris said, we have a pretty large audience at this point. If all of you like just took the time to create a YouTube account and cook those books, as one Justin Rowan would say, we would have a substantial base of subscribers too. And I mean, like we stream this everywhere. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitch, it's on my Twitter account. Like we're doing this everywhere, folks. We'll try and do these more often. But thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day, your first watch of the day as well, if you're checking us out on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. We'll just see you soon.
Yeah, everyone, thanks again for tuning in. As I just looked, we're at 399 subscribers on YouTube. Be the 400th. Be the change in the world. And look, thanks again, as Evan said, for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Our next episode, we'll go through the Clippers game, TBD, and when we're going to record them. We're going to go into the Clippers game, look ahead to Friday in Los Angeles when the Cavs will stay there. And I'm curious to see if Jetty Osman gets a haircut like he did last time. They had like a long road trip in LA when he had LeBron's barber, and he's got that little like man bun thing going around. Let's see if he gets a cut and comes out looking trim. But also now go make your second listen or watch of the day, Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 daily fantasy basketball podcast on the planet. It is free, just like Locked On Cavs, and available on every platform. Until next time, everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're listening on a podcast platform, as Evan said, thanks again for listening as well. And until next time, it's been Locked On Cavs. Peace.